right. Well, good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and call our December 17th, 2025 Left Plan 2 board meeting to order. And we will go ahead and start off with a moment of silence to remember our fallen brothers and sisters, as well as just keeping all of our Washingtonians in our thoughts as they battle some really bad weather across our state. So let's take a moment of silence. All right, thank you very much. Item number 1. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes, November 2025. Discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And just for, I'll reach out to yourself. Maybe you might have the answer. Somebody else do. Are we, because of the lag, are we going to need to do a roll call on any votes? You think we're okay? Good to go. All right. Item number 2, which is the State Investment Board annual update. Good morning.
New, other than the fact that everybody behind me has been working like crazy to make it seem very calm. So appreciate that. My presentation today is both about a little background, a little reminder about what the SIB does and how we do it, and then some conversations about returns and, I guess if you would, our, report card on how we've been doing. So let's see if we can. So big picture comments about what we do. We're a staff of 120 folks, most in Olympia, some in Seattle. We are a state agency, but we report to a board, right? We're not a cabinet agency. We don't report to the governor. We report to a board who tomorrow will be sitting right where you're sitting. So that's how we're structured. We currently have $230 billion of assets under management, which makes us one of the largest of the public pension systems in the country. We have 18 different pension funds. That's probably 80% of the dollars. And then there's a number of other things that folks should be aware of. There's L&I funds. There's permanent funds, like for the universities. There's other funds, like, for example, GET. We manage GET funds. We manage the long-term care dollars. You remember in the election that just passed, the voters approved allowing those funds to be invested in equities as well as fixed income. So there's a number of those opportunity scholarships that are smaller, and they're each kind of tailored to each group. We're in 91 countries, 50 currencies, 17,000 holdings. So we're a pretty large operation. I'm getting used, I've only been here a year. I'm just getting used to saying we, as I take credit for all the good things that everybody else has already done. Okay, so how are we structured? I talked about the board. The board has 15 members, and as you can see, it's kind of 5, 5, and 5. So there's 5 that are kind of automatic positions, right? Whoever the DRS director, currently Catherine Leathers, is a member. Whoever the L&I director is, Joel Sachs, and whoever the treasurer is, Mike Pilati. Those are set in statute. Then the House and the Senate each get to pick a member. So right now we have June Robinson and Mia Gregerson. Then there are 5 representatives of the public employee pension systems. As you can see, we have, LEOFF, retirees, PERS, TERS, SERS. And then we have 5 non-voting members. So those are the folks across the bottom who are board members. They're involved in the board meetings here just like everybody else. They're just not voters, but they provide context, history. They're all, from the investment world, so they have a lot of experience. They help our staff. They help the folks that present to us. They ask good questions. They ask pointed questions. So that's very helpful. Again, here's a detail. I won't read them all to you, but the various funds, where it says other funds, you can see it. Like I said, there's DD, there's Opportunity Scholarship, long-term service and support. That's the one I was talking about. So we have a number that we manage. Again, primarily in terms of dollars, it's the various retirement funds. So this is a slide that will show up in every presentation that we do, because it reinforces our number one guiding principle. And not only guiding principle, it's the law. So that makes it good that we follow the guiding principle, is that our job is to establish investment policies exclusively to maximize return at a prudent level of risk. So when it comes down to it, there's other work, there's other considerations, but when it comes down to it, things are decided based on maximizing return at a prudent level of risk. And this is why I would argue that the SIB was set up as reporting to a board to give some distance from the legislative political process, but it also includes, the treasurer and a member of the House and Senate to keep it connected, right? So there's a balance there. And like I said, we're a state agency, everybody who works here is a state employee. So here is a summary of the top bar. You can see this is back $230 billion. Of that, $200 billion is retirement funds, right? The overwhelming majority. And then you can see the other funds, are somewhat less. If you look across the bottom, these are not in terms of size, because if they were in terms of size, other would be tiny. What this is trying to show is how the funds are invested. So on the left with the retirement funds is the most sophisticated investing that we do. We have a number of different asset classes. The others are primarily invested in public equities and fixed income, stocks and bonds. So how have we done? So here we're looking at the pension funds. If you wonder why the numbers don't add up to 230 billion, this is the pension funds to date, and you can see how things have grown. I'll point out on the top right bar, you see an average. We average maybe 7, 8, 9% through the years. And then in 2021, we had 28.7%. I think folks who have been around the legislature will remember that was obviously a big burst of good news. When the pension system does that much better than we thought, it helps the budget situation. It helps with contribution rates coming out of people's paychecks. I don't know that I would suggest that we're going to hit 28.7 in a single year, maybe ever again. Somebody will, but that's uncommon. It was uncommon, but it was very good news. And now we're back to kind of a more normal situation. The bottom left, asset allocation. This is a very important thing that the board wrestles with. How much for each of the asset classes? How much in public equity, how much in private equity, how much in real estate, how much in fixed income. And they each have their different profiles of risk and returns. And it's that blending that drives the overall. So you can see in the bottom right, market values and returns. Across the top, if you look at 1 year, 3 year, 5 years on out, the 5 and 10 year overall, it's roughly 10% returns, but that varies a lot based on which of the asset classes. Fixed income tend to be much more stable and probably lower. That's what you would expect. Private equity is riskier and higher returns, which is the point, right? And you mix these together, and this, what we call asset allocation, is when the board figures out how much of each of these to have in our portfolio. So as an agency, the agency comes back to these 5 key success factors, and I won't read it to you, but this is like the grounding of how the SIB works. And it talks about the board, talks about our long-term perspective. It talks about operational excellence, right? This is a lot of money. Small details matter a lot when you're talking about billions of dollars. Talk about a work environment that attracts people. We have people here from all over the world. It's a very diverse and interesting bunch of professionals that work here. It feels different. I've worked in other places in state government, and this is at least geographically the most diverse place I've been by far. And then impeccable integrity at all levels. Obviously, there's so much money involved that integrity is first and foremost. Here I'll pass by this. These are just like how we put those into practice. So what are we working on these days? The strategic asset allocations for the various smaller funds. So each of these other funds have slightly different interests and needs. And we work with them to make sure that the way that we're investing meets their risk and cash flow. And we do that on a periodic basis. And now that with the LTSS, the long-term care, right, we're changing that. So there's a process that's going to go on for the next 9 to 12 months, maybe, where we figure out exactly how the new way that we can invest matches their needs, right? So it comes from both sides. So in summary, well, I could read it for you, but in summary, that we have a very complex investment program that has been built up over the years, has shown a lot of success. I think the structure that the legislature once upon a time built this, and the expectations of kind of some people say nonpartisan. I think it's more non-political, and the fact that, we're across town from the legislature, there's a little bit of distance that I think has made us able to stay out of political or any kind of political intrigue, and really focused on returns. And I think when you look at the returns, you really see the success of the agency. I think that is the end. Otherwise, I wouldn't have called it in summary. I am happy to answer questions either about how we work, how we're set up, if there's anything on the details on the numbers. Otherwise, that's my presentation.
Any questions? Yes, sir. Mike. Excuse me.
I'm looking at the asset allocations, and I'm looking at the inner circle as well as the outer circle right now. The inner circle is at 25, but private equity is actually at 28.1. Same thing with the public equity. Does that mean a rebalancing is coming?
Yes. So rebalancing is often coming, right? I want to say the problem, if you have one of the sectors that grows a little too fast, then we'll kind of lean into the wind and rebalance. So the numbers are never exact. And in fact, in the last board meeting just last month, the board chose to change those a little bit. So So that we would have to rebalance anyway, not just for the normal growth and the fluctuations. So the board chose to dial down private equity a little bit and add private credit to the mix.
Oh,
So just, we're talking a couple percentage points here and there,
but
but
percentage points are,
that was the conversation that the board had over the last year, was to come to that.
okay. So
That
that,
conclusion.
I'm just looking at, so the inner circle is more the target and the outer circle is the actuals.
Yes,
What you're
that's the
saying.
way to read it.
Okay. Okay, looks good. As I say, I mean, it's, our private equity has always been, something that, the State Investment Board, established themselves as leaders in that. And, I know that we always start shooting at us for that too. So, but, it seems to be the best return of money and I like that.
You
My
know,
pension.
in the past, in the long run, a big driver of the success of the investment program here has been private equity.
That started about the mid-90s, I think.
Yeah.
So,
So it's been a pretty good run. And
Yes. Other questions, comments? Right, not seeing any. Thank you.
okay,
Good to
thank
see
you. I hope everything stays on while you guys are here today.
Yeah.
Cross your fingers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on our agenda is the 2024 financial audit report from the State Actuary's Office. And I'm not sure who's first.
Auditor's office.
Sorry, Auditor's Office. Yes, thank you. I'm not sure who's going to go first or. Okay.
Good morning.
Thank
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to share the results of the board's most recent audit. My name is Desiree Renah, and with me I have Kevin Bush and Scott Bills. Before we get started, it's important to note that the presentation that we prepared for you today is an overall summary of our completed audit. To supplement this presentation, we have provided a packet of information that includes copies of our audit report to be issued and of any related audit recommendations. And while we don't plan to speak directly from the packet, we are prepared to reference where you can locate the results being shared within your packet. So with that, let's begin. Right. Whether you're new to the audit process or have been through one in the past, understanding audit results is important to establishing and maintaining good government. First, audits help build trust in your organization by letting you know whether things are working or whether there are areas that might need fine-tuning. Audits can shine a light on areas that are important to your citizens, external stakeholders, and your own employees. Second, as an independent organization that conducts over 2,600 audits of state and local governments each year, our audits can be relied upon to provide transparent results directly to citizens. And lastly, audit recommendations are made to assist your government in continuing to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of its operations. So our goal today is to make sure you understand the results of your audit and answer any questions that you may have. So we conducted a schedule audit for the period of July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. The objective of the schedule audit is to issue an opinion as to whether the information included in the schedule can be relied upon to make decisions. We are pleased to report that we are issuing an unmodified, clean audit opinion on the board's schedule. This is an opinion you want to receive and provides assurance that the schedule is stated fairly and materially correct. Additionally, it's important to note that our audits are conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. Those standards also require us to gain an understanding of the board's internal controls or processes that it goes through to prepare the schedule. Should we identify any weaknesses or concerns with that process that could or did result in any significant errors in the schedule, we would be required to bring those to your attention and include that information in our report. We are pleased to report that we did not identify any concerns with the board's processes that are required to be brought to your attention or included in our report. Lastly, audit standards also require us to consider compliance with applicable laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements where non-compliance could affect the fair presentation of the schedule. You'll see that your report indicates that there were no instances of non-compliance that were material to the schedule. In relation to our schedule audit, professional audit standards also require us to share with you whether there are material, large misstatements that were identified and subsequently corrected by management. We are pleased to report that there were no material misstatements identified during the course of our audit. We are also required to note whether there were any uncorrected misstatements that remained uncorrected in the audit schedule, and no uncorrected misstatements have been identified. As part of our schedule audit, we evaluated certain risks that we would like to share with you. First, audit standards require auditors to communicate areas required for special consideration, of which one area is always required to be assessed is management override of controls. This is a risk that management may be able to process transactions outside of established and effective control processes. To evaluate this area, we reviewed journal entries throughout the audit period to identify incorrect or unallowable adjustments performed outside of your routine processes. And we are pleased to share that no recommendations were reported in this area. So now that we have shared the results of the board's fiscal year 2025 audit, we do have a few closing remarks to bring to your attention. First, we have provided a copy of the materials to the Administrative Services Manager. Second, we are pleased to report that our cost for this engagement is expected to be within the estimate previously provided. So we thank the board for its timely responses to the audit requests, which allowed our audit to progress efficiently and remain within budget. And we have also included information on the board's next audit, which will cover the accountability for public resources and the financial statement or schedule audit. Okay, we expect the board's report to be published on our website within the next 1 to 2 weeks. If you have not already, you can sign up to receive notifications on when our reports are released, as well as other news articles and alerts, including resources our office publishes. Please note that in the past, as a courtesy, we included a link to the report on our website and also may have attached a final report as PDF. We have changed this practice in continuing effort to clearly communicate with you while following cybersecurity best practices by avoiding extra links and attachments. Our new correspondents will notify you when your reports are released and provide helpful instructions on how to locate your government's audit report on our website. Once your audit report publishes on our website, automated customer service surveys will be emailed to your agency head, audit liaison, and in key points of contact. We hope that you will take a few moments to complete the survey, as all feedback is helpful in improving our services and knowing how to better serve your needs. The survey can also be forwarded to others you would like to share feedback on our services. Before we wrap up our presentation today, we would like to thank board officials, LEOFF and DES staff for their assistance and cooperation throughout the audit. And this concludes our presentation to the board on our fiscal year 2025 audit results. We thank everyone for your time today. At this point, we'd like to open up for any last comments or questions.
Any questions? Go ahead, Jacob.
So just one quick comment. Just want to thank the auditor's office for their work, and also Jessie for all of her work with the auditor's office. And I believe, was this your second year of being the lead on it, or second year of being the lead on it? So thank you for all your work on it. And for doing, while I'm talking to Jessie, thank you for doing 2 jobs today too, for filling in for Chloe while she's out sick. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you again, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
All right. Number 4 on the list is the actuarial audit of demographic expense study from Millman Group. Good morning.
Morning. Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Mr. Chair, somebody was offended when you got actuaries and that accountants confused. I'm not sure who
Not
should be
sure which
more,
side, but yeah.
not sure who should be more offended, but I can tell you there's a lot of actuaries here today. So,
It's the power outage thing. I'm blaming it. So.
well, thank you for having us here this morning. The state's been working with Milliman for about 12 years now, but for better, for worse, we're changing out our team a little bit. You'll see some new faces going forward. Let's see here. Get the, down there. We'll do that. Okay. So we recently renewed our engagement with the state to provide actuarial auditing and review services for you, working with the SAO, but most importantly, working for the board and for the Department of Retirement Services and the Pension Funding Council. Going forward, Scott and I will be the faces you'll see most often coming to present to you about our activities. We are supported by other team members that for some reason Scott and I can't be here. You may see Gary and Dan in the future. We worked very closely together on the audit. Dan and Gary have been working with the state for the last 12 years. And just to go to the next slide, I guess I'm going to keep doing that. So the state recently went out to renew or to find, did a procurement to decide who the auditing actuary was going to be. And again, Milliman's had this contract for 12 years, but with an understanding this is an audit and kind of a peer review function, we thought it would be a good idea to kind of change out the faces at Milliman to give a fresh perspective since it is an audit and review function. So we just renewed our engagement for 6 more years potentially. And then Scott and I are going to be, again, the lead auditors, the actuarial auditors. They'll be presenting to you and will be leading our engagement. And so this is our first activity under this new contract to review the demographic experience study conducted by the Office of State Actuary. And then we will be going forward reviewing every other year, reviewing the actuarial evaluation and presenting to you on our review of the OSA's actuarial evaluation. And so here we're obviously here to talk about the demographic experience study and just to kind of go over the governance and what your board's role is in that. The state code does require an experience study. And again, I know you've received a number of presentations from the OSA on this, but essentially what we're doing is taking a step back and looking at all the assumptions we use to estimate how long our state employees are working, how much they're going to get paid over the course of their career, and then how long they're going to live in retirement so that we can estimate and kind of budget for paying for their benefit over time and accumulating contributions, balancing that with our investment returns and making sure we have enough money in the bank to pay benefits when they come due. Obviously, the most important things that we do. The OSA does perform the experience study, and they make recommendations to this board and to the Pension Funding Council. Their work and our work are governed by actuarial standards of practice. We're a self-regulated group of professionals, so we put forth standards to help guide us in our work, kind of our toolkit and kind of how we measure ourselves and how we apply our work. So that guides our hands and then guides the OSA's hands. And then, and obviously the state hires an independent actuary to review it. So just another level of governance there. And then you all will ultimately adopt a set of assumptions that'll be used to set contribution rates and perform the annual actuarial value or biannual actuarial evaluation. So that's kind of what your role is here. There's 2 sets of assumptions, I think, that you're going to be deciding on later today. We're obviously here to talk about the demographic assumptions. And like I said, that's really kind of the people assumptions, how long people are going to work, how long people are going to live. There is another set of assumptions that you all will adopt, and that's the economic assumptions, which we're not necessarily here to comment. Our review was of the demographic assumptions, but there are economic assumptions that you've talked about with the OSA, the expected return on assets and inflation and some of the different kind of forward-looking economic assumptions and indicators. And so lastly, just to give you an idea of the process. So, we're here to support you all and to kind of give you our perspectives on the work that the OSA is doing. So just wanted to kind of give you a flavor of what we've been doing and how we've been collaborating with the OSA. We started the process back in August, and the OSA shared with us all of their their backup data and all their analysis and their discussion of what they looked at and what they're recommending going forward. We went through all that. We had a couple meetings with the OSA to talk about, to ask some questions and to get some more insights and to share with them some of our observations. And then we recently released a draft report of what kind of our perspectives and our suggestions. We're going to go through that a little bit, go through that draft report with you all and our perspectives and our feedback. And then we're obviously here today to talk with you all and be available to answer any questions you might have about that process and the assumptions you'll be voting on later in this meeting, presumably. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. Do you know how to advance the slide?
I've got it, I think.
Okay.
All right, there we go. So the bottom line of our review of the demographic experience study is exactly what you'd want. We came to the conclusion that based on all the good information that was shared with us and the input from the OSA, that all the recommended assumptions that were discussed with this board back in September at length are reasonable and appropriate for use in the valuation. So it was really helpful to get all the information that they did provide, the OSA did provide to us, and get to see their thorough thought process and kind of what was behind all those recommendations. And so we agree that it meets actuarial standards and that the assumptions are reasonable. We have a couple of things, highlights and observations to cover on the next couple slides that are in our draft report and in our final report that will be forthcoming are discussed in more detail. So we want to bring a couple points to you, but bottom line, the set of assumptions that were presented to you are reasonable for the purpose intended. And I do want to note, we were, as part of the back and forth with OSA, we were reviewing stuff that was in draft form for them. So at times we maybe came back and had a comment that might be shown here or in our written report that then they reflected in their final, or they intend to reflect in their final summary. So it may not always fully correspond to the final version that you'll see of their report if we have something highlighted here. But so key points to highlight is that from all the information we were provided, we were able to see that it was a very detailed, thoughtful approach to the review. Importantly, it wasn't just a, what did we do 6 years ago? Let's turn the crank and come out with the exact same assumption based on new data. You need to reflect the new data, but they also clearly were looking at what happened over the study period that may need to get special treatment, particularly say pandemic affected data, retirement rates, mortality, stuff like that, that either should be kept out or should be considered sort of differently than standard course. So all of that was done in a very thoughtful and sort of diligent way as far as thinking through it, documenting it. The mortality analysis we want to call out for a moment here because that is the most impactful single demographic assumption change that was being made, as was discussed with you in September. And so the update from your prior tables to the new Pub 2016 mortality tables, which despite the name 2016, are the latest and greatest. They were published last year. 2016 is the data, midpoint of the data that's used in there. So we consider the recommendation of that as a starting point to be appropriate. They're making sort of appropriate adjustments for the different populations, including using public safety for the LEOFF board assumption. So all of that is very consistent with the approach we would normally take for recommending similar assumptions for clients where we're setting that assumption. So all made a lot of sense. The mortality improvement scale to continue to reflect expected improvement in the future. Again, all fit with exactly kind of what we'd expect. As was discussed a little bit in September's meeting, I know there's also with this study a shift to a benefits weighted approach to setting this assumption, which we think is preferable and is a good improvement because that will help minimize gains and losses that you might expect for this assumption, just reflecting that people with the higher benefits and higher liabilities tend to have a little bit longer life expectancy, and so really building it into the approach of setting your assumption to try to keep the liability kind of trued up going forward. A couple more observations. So we did share some thoughts with the Office of the State Actuary on ways to consider kind of focusing some of the presentation and discussion of the adjustment on mortality to break it a little bit more clearly into retirees and employees and show the credibility for the different groups a little bit more rather than some more boiled down assumptions, and they have actually this week we saw updated summaries that had reflected some of this. And so again, it was a good collaborative back and forth, and we think hopefully has improved the final product that will come out in the end. And similarly, we had a note on approach on sort of graphical display of the service-based salary assumption that might be helpful going forward. And again, we've sort of seen that they've reflected that in more recent stuff. Last point, just to note that I mentioned mortality was the single biggest impact of the demographic assumptions, recommended changes. The next biggest was the LEOFF 2 retirement assumption changes. And this is one that is admittedly tricky given external circumstances during the period under study. So pandemic affected experience and SHB 1701 coming in here and some very high retirement experience right around and after that, which I know was shown to this board in September. So because of that, there really was a requirement to use some professional judgment. There's not really current quote unquote normal experience periods yet after the change to the plan provisions. And so this is something where the Office of the State Actuary had to look at the data that was available and then use professional judgment to try to set where that may be going forward. So it all was an appropriate and well thought out process, but it is something that is going to warrant continued monitoring as you get kind of beyond the period that was sort of anomalous here for a number of reasons and see where things sort of settle out in the end. So I'll stop there. That's really the main material we had to present, but are happy to discuss any questions or circle back to anything from our presentation.
Questions? I did have one just regarding you mentioned how you'd circle back and look at the retirement period. How long will you give that? What's that look like? Because we're all up here asking the same question.
Yep.
Police and fire is like,
Yep.
we know we've had this exodus and it's been a lot, but we also know that about that time frame when we hired people, in that early 90s, they're approaching as well.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have probably big numbers again, just kind of curious.
So what I would say, I mean, the next demographic experience study is scheduled 6 years out, I believe. But what I would expect the Office of the State Actuary to be doing, and I don't think we've discussed this point exactly with them, but year by year going forward, monitoring the gains and losses that are coming specific to retirement experience, so that if something was to kind of be revealing as you get a year out or 2 years out, if you see a persistent pattern, there's always going to be fluctuations, but if you see a persistent pattern that's implying, maybe people are retiring a little faster than we built in here, even though we raised the retirement rates, then you could potentially get ahead of that and make an off-cycle change to the assumption. So I'm not sure exactly their monitoring process, but that's what I would suspect, is that there's going to be keeping an eye on it in case it warrants revisiting sooner rather than later. But it's going to take a couple years of experience to really get a read on that.
Appreciate that. Good.
Trying to figure out how I want to ask the question. So we have a retirement age of 53. Do you guys look at, even though the average the age of retirement is 53, do you look at the average number of years? Where are people retiring at? They're not retiring at 53. They're usually are they going past 58 to 60? And then from that point on, how many years of retirement they in before they are no longer in retirement? So is that some of the data you use?
Yeah. So and I guess to be clear, like we didn't do our own replication of the analysis that the Office of the State Actuary did. We reviewed the analysis they did. So they were doing that kind of exactly that kind of work and setting the rates, and then we're reviewing the analysis they did and confirming or asking questions around it. But to your point, there are assumptions for the likelihood of retirement at any age.
Mm-hmm.
And importantly for your plan, that's separated into one set of rates for people who are less than 25 years of service and a higher set of rates for people who have gotten past 25 years of service. So now they've gotten that 10 years of the 2.5% accrual. And so that knowing that might be an incentive to keep someone around past 25 years of service, they're no longer getting that higher accrual rate per year.
Right.
And may be both ready and able to retire after that longer point. So in the assumption changes that were made here, there was, I believe, a slight decrease on the retirement rates for the under 25 years of service assumption and an increase for the post 25 years of service, which was consistent with the data. And then that increase, especially on the post 25, is the thing that was sort of made a partial step to some more recent experience on that. But it will be the part that you'll want to continue to monitor to see where that settles in sort of after the SHB change.
Yeah, the reason being is for every year that you continue to work, lessens the number of years you're retired.
Yep.
So that actually figures into how much money is going out of the system and where we need to be for rates and returns, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And those assumptions are year by year. So there's a certain percentage of a person is expected to retire at 53 and then at 54 and 55 and so on. So which kind of models the system in aggregate. So those, it's not just we assume everyone goes at 53, we assume everyone goes 58. It's a little more subtle than that and gets.
I'm going to the other end of the scale. I'm hoping I'm going to hurt the pension system. So if I can last that long.
Yeah, that's great.
Other questions? All right. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Right. Item number 5 on our agenda is the adoption of long-term economic assumptions, and Jacob will be doing that.
Okay, good morning. For the record, Jacob White, staff to the board. Hopefully you did not save all of your actuarial questions for me.
We did. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're going to start with the adoption of the long-term economic assumptions. So the board is tasked with adopting economic assumptions every 2 years. The actuaries produce these studies during odd-numbered calendar years. And then in September, the board or the OSA presented to the board the results of their study. And then, as you just heard from Milliman, those results were audited and found it to be reasonable. And here we have a breakdown of what those recommendations are. You can see the change in inflation from 2.75 to 3, in general salary growth also going up a quarter, and then investment returns also going up a quarter. And then here we have a breakdown from the actuary's office. They are required by law to always include the aggregate rate, and then they also have the interage normal, which is the minimum rate for LEOFF 2. And so the funded status impact of adopting these recommended changes is 1.7%. And so here, a little confusing here, but we've got the chart that's taking both the economic assumptions and the demographic assumptions that you'll be in front of you next, and seeing how those, when combined, impact the funded status of the plan. So here you can see that 1.7% change for the economic assumptions. So action from the board today, option 1 is to adopt the recommended assumption changes, and then option 2 would be to not adopt those recommended changes. If the board does not adopt the recommended changes, then the assumptions stay where they currently are. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or ask an actuary to come up and help me.
For the group, we have 2 choices. What's the pleasure?
Move to adopt the recommended assumption changes.
It's been moved to adopt the recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Right? All right. Sounds good. All right. All in favor of adopting the recommended changes which are before you, go ahead and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? All right. Motion passes. Jacob, are you still there? Correct?
I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, I know that. I mean, I'm just looking at the agenda.
Yes, I'm gonna be here for a while.
So I'm looking right now, yeah. We are looking at item number 6, which is the adoption of demographic experience study assumptions.
Issue in front of the board here is that the board is tasked with adopting demographic experience study assumptions every 6 years. Every 6 years, OSA must complete a demographic experience study. In September, OSA presented the results of that study to the board. And then that study was audited by Milliman and found to be reasonable. So for this one, I don't have a chart like I did on the previous one of the exact changes to each of the assumptions, although you did hear in more detail what those changes were in Milliman's presentation. But the 5 major assumption changes, and then there were 15 other assumptions in that study, in the demographic study that OSA did. Next page, I'll touch on these in a bit more detail, or at least let you see it. I won't read through each of them, but as Milliman said in their presentation, the biggest changes were to those top 2, the retirement rates and the mortality rates. You see a common theme here of increased rates. And then here we're back to that slide from the previous presentation where you can see the impact of adopting those demographic changes, which is a range from lowering the funded status from 4 to 2.5%. And then you see how that the interplay of that and then the adoption of the economic assumptions, which result in an overall projected funded status of between 100 and 102%. So the options in front of the board today are option 1 to adopt the recommended assumption changes, and option 2 would be to not adopt those recommended changes. Once again, if they're not adopted, then the assumptions stay where they are currently at. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Questions and direction?
Move approval.
Item number 2. Correct? I'm sorry, adopt the recommended
Adopt,
assumptions.
move
Thank
approval of the recommended assumption changes. Thank you.
Make sure, yeah. All right.
Oh, man, that was bold.
Yeah. Got it. Motion's been made and seconded for number 1, adopt the recommended assumption changes. Discussion. You're hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion to adopt passes. Thank you. Item number 7, surviving spouse medical reimbursements, final proposal.
Okay, the issue in front of the board today is there are gaps and inconsistencies in medical insurance premium reimbursements for surviving spouses of line of duty death. Before I start getting into more detail on it, just a overall reminder that survivors of line of duty death are eligible for PEB, for health insurance coverage. And then they are also eligible to be reimbursed for the premiums for PEB. And both those benefits came from separate bills endorsed by the LEOFF 2 board. So this question came up when I last presented on this for, there was a question about how does this compare to other plans? I believe specifically I was asked about how it compares to State Patrol, their retirement system. And so I've got the RCW there if you want to read it. I won't bother going through all of it, but that State Patrol qualifies, that they do qualify for PEB coverage along with reserve officers and volunteer firefighters. However, only LEOFF members qualify to have those PEB premiums reimbursed by the pension plan. And so once again, that's only for surviving spouses of line of duty death. So I mentioned for the issue that there were gaps and inconsistencies. So going to go through each of those and then get into more detail on them. The first one is that once survivors of line of duty death are Medicare eligible, they are no longer fully reimbursed for healthcare premiums. The second one is that survivors of line of duty death only receive reimbursements for PEB, while catastrophic disability retirees receive reimbursements for any premiums up to the amount of COBRA. And then, although I should add there that catastrophic disability retirees are not eligible for PEB. So, and then the third inconsistency was that survivors of line of duty death are not reimbursed for premium payments between the death of the member and LNI determining that the death was in the line of duty. And so where that issue comes from is that, like I said on the first part, that they're only eligible for PEB and then PEB reimbursements. So the surviving spouse cannot be enrolled in PEB until the death is determined to be in the line of duty. So there can be this gap between the death where they have to pay for their, they're not in PEB, so they can't be reimbursed for PEB until LNI's made that determination that the death was in line of duty. And so I did work with LNI to get some data on that about how long that gap can be. And so they were able to quickly provide me with 2 years of data. They have a new IT system they could pull from quickly with that. Would have been more intensive to go back further. But in that time, there were 27 line of duty death determinations for LEOFF 2 members. The average time that took was 506 days. The longest was 102 months. And so how that happens is that is the appeals process. That is someone going through the appeals, far into the appeals process for that determination to be made. And there was only one determination that took less than a month. Yeah.
Sorry, Jacob, this may be a question that you can't answer. But, you know, as you were on your previous slides, you're talking about the data and the average number of days here. I saw just a lot of blank stares around the table. I'm just wondering what takes so long for that determination to happen? What are the hangups? What are the holdups? And again, you may not know all these answers, but
Yeah.
it's just really concerning to me that it takes that long.
Yeah, I can't answer that question other than just I do know that the longer ones were in the appeals process, but why an average one can take that long. And obviously the average is very skewed by the ones that have been much longer. And I don't have the full long chart here, but in your materials there is a chart where you could see each individual one and how long those took. But yeah, it seemed like even when things go smoothly, it takes a few months for the determination to be made.
Senator Rowley.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a thought on this, and Jay, you bring up a good point. Is this something the board should visit in the future as to maybe a legislative fix about an expedited appeal process in this specific situation?
That we could put that on the agenda for study for next interim on the policy options for the board to consider next interim.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
I would, go ahead, Pat. No, you go. How would we get more information? I'm just curious on that, the big one. I mean, I'd like to know really more. Where would we find that, or how could we
Yeah, I could dig into that further and get back to the board. Like I said, I was very happy that Elle and I got back to me quickly on this. I did not approach them for this part until later in the process. So they did, work with me to get me this data quickly, but I'd have to follow up and get more specifics from that. I could work with them and DRS on that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things we can, one, if we can review this, I think we can use it as a learning,
Yeah.
a tool, whether it's the employees, employers, whatever it may be, just to make sure we don't have missteps like that, because that just doesn't seem right. But,
And sometimes there can be a gap in the member applying with LNI for the benefit, so it can get off to a slow start with that, and then, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in a different role now, but back in, are some of these reasons for the appeals, does the employer actually will deny a line of duty death, then LNI has got to deal with them to move it forward also? Does it have that much to do with the employer, or is it pretty much just, I know these are questions you probably can't answer.
Yeah,
Maybe
I'm
that's
sorry.
what, this, I think we're all on the same page here, because when you say everything going smoothly, I'm thinking the average is over a year to get a line of duty death, and we have a spouse out there that's paying medical. Doesn't make sense to me at all. And to me, the state agency, LNI, is supposed to be there to help the employee get the benefit they need to, and if they're gone, then there's always somebody, such as a spouse possibly, or dependents, that are looking to, make sure that they can still live. So I guess I'm on a rant right now, because it just drives me nuts when I see stuff like this, because I remember days before, because sometimes employers also will deny a line of duty, because they used to have a box that says either line of duty death or not. And there are some, I'm not saying we're anybody sitting here, but there are employers that sometimes just mark that, or employer marks that it's not a line of duty death, just because it's easier to do that, and they'll let the attorneys mess with it. But
go ahead, Chris.
Just real quick, I mean, I think it's really important that what we do right now today is we fix the gap. And then we can mitigate the cost for what that might be to the plan by addressing the timeliness of the process. So if the timeliness of the process is going to drag out the cost, that's going to raise the cost of the plan. I think the most important thing is we address the problem, and that's what's before us today. So let's fix the gap, and then we can work on the cost.
Hold on, we haven't got there yet.
Okay, so I touched on those three inconsistencies, and then typically when give these presentations, I go through policy options for the board. This one's a little different, where we've have this more umbrella issue, and then we have these three different areas where we've identified these gaps or inconsistencies. And so the bill draft that's in your materials addresses each of those, and I'm going to walk through. So I've worked with the actuary's office and DRS on pricing those, and so we're going to call those the provisions instead of policy options, because they're not really different options for the same problem. They're each addressing a different issue. So the first one, this one would reimburse surviving spouses of line of duty death for Medicare premiums Part A and B. So as a reminder, this is one that came to the board from a letter from a surviving spouse. They were being fully reimbursed for their PEB coverage. They reached the age where they're required by PEB to enroll in Medicare. They pay Medicare through their Social Security, and they are no longer reimbursed for that part of their healthcare premium. So the pros of moving forward with this provision would be it's consistent with the board's policy of reimbursing health insurance premiums for line of duty death survivors. And it would be consistent with catastrophic disability retirees. If you're looking to align those benefits, catastrophic disability retirees are reimbursed for their Medicare premium, Medicare Part A and B premiums as well. The con is there is a cost to the plan for that, and I'll get into the specific cost at a later slide. The actuaries have broken this down by provision. Okay. Provision 2 provides surviving spouses of line of duty death the option to opt out of PEB and have the same medical insurance premium reimbursement options as catastrophic disability retirees. And so this one, there wasn't a letter to the board on this issue, but since the board was looking at these other related issues, included this. It's a subject that's came up in the past. And so the pros of this would be that it allows surviving spouses to keep their current insurance and providers. And so this comes up that when someone has a line of duty death, they are not able, if they want to be reimbursed for their health insurance premiums, they need to change to PEB. And when they do that, they can't always keep the same providers. So they're going through the trauma of the line of duty death. And then also, while they are, I'm sure in most instances, very happy to be eligible for PEB and premium reimbursements, it does create these situations where they may have to find new providers and insurance. And then once again, this would, pro of this would be consistent with catastrophic disability retirees. And then that's another place this can come up to when a catastrophic disability retiree dies. If their death is determined to be line of duty, then their spouse would be in the same situation where they're no longer covered by the same, if they want premium reimbursements, they can no longer be covered by the same insurance. They would need to join PEB. And so what this bill, part of the bill draft did, is it does require the member to make a one-time election to either be in PEB or opt out of PEB. Cons to this would be it increased the cost to the plan, and then it does, that one-time election does create that additional administrative step that the survivors would have to navigate, which is, just another choice, decision, paperwork that they're having to fill out and deal with at the time of also with, once again, the trauma of a line of duty death. But if they, I would say the way the bill is drafted, if they do not opt out of PEB, then they would be put into PEB and they would be able to get reimbursed for that. Here, I went ahead and put this from the actuaries. This is part of their cost breakdown. You can see the difference of what they assume the PEB premium cost versus the employer, what they call the employer medical premium assumptions. Kind of see that, employer medical, which is what they could look at the catastrophic data to identify their assumptions with that. And then provision 3, which kind of already discussed, but that's to reimburse surviving spouses of line of duty death for medical insurance premiums paid during that delay in a member's death being determined line of duty. Pros, once again, consistent with the policy of reimbursing health insurance premiums for line of duty death survivors. And then the cons would be there would be an increased cost to the plan for providing that coverage for that time. So here we have a breakdown of each of the provisions and what that total cost will be. So even on that third one, just want to highlight that one real quick, that even with some of those long delays, there still is no expected rate impact of that provision. The other provisions both have an expected employee rate impact of 1 basis points for a total of 2 basis points if the board was to move forward with endorsing this legislation. And then as part of this process, also work with DRS on doing a draft fiscal note of the administrative cost. And so here is their breakdown of the fiscal of the administrative cost. Do just want to highlight with this is that they are in the process of implementing a new IT system. So that has a impact to the administrative costs because they've got to update their current system and then put in a work order change for the new system. So that's going to be a common theme for a few years while DRS implements that new system. So the next steps for the board would be option 1 would be to motion to endorse legislation. The board would be able to choose any combination of those 3 provisions. Well, and then option 2 would be no further action at this time. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Chris? Sure, go ahead.
Just want to make sure I understand the impacts to LEOFF
versus maybe state patrol or reserve? Would this align everything, or is there still some differences, and can you?
Yeah, it would not align anything. So this would just be changing left two, and this is all of these provisions are on the reimbursements. And since the other plans aren't reimbursed for PEB, they are given access to PEB, but they're not reimbursed for PEB. This, yeah, would not align left two with those plans.
Just kind of thinking about the optics of that and not sure what we want to do around that, but I was just wanting to make sure we were going into this eyes wide open.
Total right now, how many people would this apply to?
See if that is.
10, 100, what, I mean, where are we at?
So this would apply to all line of duty death survivors. I do not have that number. I'm looking to Steve, or is it like 50 something, Mitch? 98. So yeah, 98.
Fair enough.
Sorry, that was on one of the L&I slide I had up, had that on the top. Forgot about that.
Is this inclusive of, like, if you've got dual enrollees, so the spouse is also under PEB with another position, or how does that work in this situation?
I'm not sure. I can't answer that. I'm sorry. I know there's not time to get back to you on that. Yeah.
I'll make a motion to move forward on 1 and 3.
Motion is made for items number 1 and 3. Is there a second? Discussion? Pat?
No.
Oh, I'll ask the question just because, what was the 2? Chris, what were your thoughts on 2?
I think PEB is a known cost. I think COBRA rates are employer dependent, and depending if we're gonna put our risk on cost to the individual employers to negotiate good healthcare plans, I'm not sure that's always what's happening. And we do have a fixed controlled cost with PEB. So I mean, at this point, 1 and 3 make sense. I don't know that PEB and offering the opportunity to opt out of PEB and create risk with extra cost to the plan that we can't control and mitigate seems like it's a bit risky. And I'm not sure what the benefit necessarily is. So since I don't understand whether there's a real benefit to the surviving members, and I know that there's extra cost to the plan and that we owe fiduciary obligation to the members of the plan to spend the money the most wisely, I'm comfortable with 1 and 3. I'm not comfortable with 2. If somebody else is, I'm happy to entertain the arguments and hear the positions, but right now I'm comfortable with 1 and 3.
Okay, thank you for that. Discussion on items 1 and 3 was a motion. Seeing and hearing no one. All those in favor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just want to offer that we make sure that if we do go forward with this, that we might include a title broad enough to expand it to other members potentially of other retirement programs.
Okay, I think just for clarification, Jacob, on your example, you had volunteers as one of the groups that had access to, right?
Yes, they have access to PEB. The State Patrol and volunteers and reserve have access to it, but not reimbursements. But I could do a bill title that has that emergency service personnel that's on this slide that the RCW references. I could
just have the title broad enough that we could do it, not necessarily that they would start off, but I think they just have that opportunity would be my amendment to the motion.
That's catastrophic, this part.
Hey, you're not muted.
Who's whispering?
All right, so motion was for items number 1 and 3. Further discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 8, catastrophic disability survivor benefit, final proposal.
Okay, the issue in the front of the board here is that there are policy inconsistencies with the administration of joint and survivor benefits for survivors of catastrophic disability retirees compared to those benefits for other left to survivors. I do want to say this is this is the third presentation I've given on this. And it's already been a difficult enough one, a complicated enough one. And then some of those policy inconsistencies have changed slightly as we've continued to dig into this and look into it further. So if some of this doesn't feel quite like what you remember, that's probably why. But I'll try to touch on kind of the whole journey we've been on here. Identified two inconsistencies. The first one being that line of duty deaths for active duty members are treated differently than line of duty deaths that occur in retirement. Not always, often they are treated the same for benefits, but at least in this one specific area, that is not currently true. And that is that for the line of duty death survivor benefit, it is a fully subsidized benefit when someone dies while they're in active duty. But if someone retires and then their death is determined to be line of duty death, then that survivor is not currently provided with a fully subsidized benefit. Instead, they get the survivor benefit that their spouse has, them and their spouse have taken a reduction to pay for. And then the second issue is the issue that we originally started out looking into, and that is that joint and survivor benefits for CAT disability retirees are not always calculated based on the pension that the retiree is receiving. And specifically, those who are receiving the minimum benefit, which is the 70% benefit, have their survivor benefit calculated on what's called their duty disability benefit would be instead. And so that duty disability benefit is your benefit that's based off your service credit, but then it's unreduced. And I'll have more of a breakdown of that on future slides here. So this is just more detail on that first issue. This is the RCW for 2000. It came out of a 2010 bill that was endorsed by the Left 2 board. It was for the retirement allowance of a member who is killed in the course of employment or line of duty death, that their survivor benefit was not subject to an actual reduction for early retirement, and that actual reduction or an actual reduction to reflect the joint and 100% survivor option. Then, like I said, this benefit has only been provided to survivors of active duty, line of duty death, and not for those that occur in retirement. So this issue broadened. The last time I spoke to the board on this, we were only looking at if someone had paid, we were making the assumption that this was not being treated differently for active duty deaths or deaths that occurred in retirement at that time. And continuing to work with the actuary's office and DRS, realized that this issue was broader and this may not have been the intent of the original law, the original bill that was endorsed by the Left 2 board to limit this to only active duty deaths. And I would say just like I said, kind of came up on this issue a little later in the process. And digging into it, I've had a chance to go back and review the legislative record, go back and look at some of the work the Left 2 board did in studying the issue and the actuarial fiscal notes at the time. And it's not really clear what the intent was based off those. The area of the law that of the RCW that's quoted up there is in the death benefits, and those benefits do relate to people who die in active duty. But this specific section of it does not say anything about it needing to be active duty. This benefit was included with other death benefits. So that bill that was endorsed by the Left 2 board that was analyzed at the time had other benefits included in it, which made it a little unclear going back over that record how it was priced at that time, what the intent was at that time. And then did just want to touch on too that that may have been intentional to treat active duty deaths and and active duty versus post retirement differently, because if a death does occur post retirement, that does give that retiree and their eventual survivor an opportunity to leave, to take a reduction, to leave a benefit. Yeah. Okay, so some background data. So this is for the second issue on the 70% benefit and how that's how the survivor benefit isn't calculated on that, but only being calculated on the duty disability benefit. So this was an administrative decision by DRS. They did a decision paper, which is included in your materials. It wasn't their original process, but after a few years of administrating this benefit, they made that change. In part, they made that change according to their decision paper based on concerns of it not aligning with what a line of duty death survivor gets, that a catastrophic disability survivor could be getting a better benefit than a line of duty death survivor. And so they attempted to align those benefits. And then there were other reasons too, including that the 70% benefit is very complicated. There are offsets. It's not as simple as you just get 70% of your final average salary. Instead, there are offsets applied to that to ensure that retiree does not get more than 100% of their final average salary. And those workers' comp and Social Security disability, the totals of that change over time. They have their own COLAs that are applied to that, and so someone's it is complicated to determine what exactly the survivor benefit should be based on. Should it just be based on the 70%, or should it move up and down with the offsets that are applied to that? So the bill draft I've provided you with, I tried to keep this simple and stick to it would be based off the 70% and would not take into account those offsets. And so that could create situations where if the offsets are big enough, someone could be taking a very large reduction on what is a small left to benefit. I'm going to spare you the math problems I tried to walk through the last couple times, but just to say that that is a moving target, and that this bill draft, instead of trying to follow that, just sticks to the 70% final average salary. And then how many people this potentially impacts? There are currently 67 catastrophic disability retirees, and 23 of those are receiving that 70% minimum benefit. So it would only impact those members. The 44 that are receiving the duty disability benefit, no impact to them. So some more policy background. This benefit was passed the catastrophic disability benefit was passed in 2006. Like I said, the initial DRS policy, and then they made a change to that policy back in 2014. And then it came to our attention. I think the board had been made aware of it in the past. There was the DRS had planned on doing rulemaking that did not occur. And then an issue came to the board. DRS was able to resolve that issue without needing to make a legislative change or a change in their policy. But it did put into action needing to update that rule. So DRS is planning on going through the rulemaking process to put their current policy into rule. I'm going to touch on that a little bit on a later slide. Okay, circling back. So once again, same as the previous one, have provisions instead of policy options. Provision 1, for left to retirees who pass away from duty-related causes, this provision would provide the survivor with a 100% JNS benefit. It would provide them with the same benefit as currently that active duty, line of duty death survivors are getting. And then provision 2, for left to survivors of retirees who receive a catastrophic disability benefit and elect a JNS payment option, this provision would calculate the survivor benefit based on that 70% of the members' FAS. And then the actuaries, where I worked with the actuaries and DRS on the bill draft language, and then they were able to provide a pricing on this. Here you can see the breakdown. Provision 1 would have a 1 basis point impact on the employee rate. Provision 2 would not have a rate impact, and then the total would be that 1 basis point. And then DRS completed a draft fiscal note. Same as the previous one, some of that cost is to update the current system and the new system. And then, like I said, I wanted to circle back on the rulemaking process. So DRS, I had a chance to talk to the DRS rules coordinator, I believe is her title, before the meeting. And so DRS has not actually started that rulemaking process. They put it on hold while the board did this study. But their plan is, depending on what action the board takes, to then move forward with the rulemaking process. That rulemaking process will allow for public comment. And I point that out in particular because of the options for the board here. So options in front of the board. Number 1 would be to endorse the bill draft language. 2 would be to direct staff to provide written comment, identifying the concerns that we've identified here in this presentation to DRS as part of that rulemaking process. And then option 3 would be no further action. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Jacob, so can you explain the rulemaking piece a little bit more clearly to me?
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity for us to provide feedback and a rule that would be implemented without legislation that would work within what we're looking for?
I believe these are administrative decisions, especially on the second option, but I believe there's a chance even on the first provision of the bill that these are administrative decisions by DRS. So yeah, I believe that we could provide comment to them as part of the rulemaking process. We've done similar things in the past, and in that identify these issues, request that they continue to work with board staff on that and see if it can be resolved through that administrative process. And then I could report back to the board next interim on how that goes. And then you could consider legislation at that point if you want.
Mr. Chair, it does feel to me like that seems like the best path forward in this time. We can always come back and endorse a bill, but I would move that we take up option number 2.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded for option number 2 to direct staff to provide written comment identifying concerns to DRS for rulemaking process. Discussion. Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? 2 is adopted.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I wanted to wait until after the motion's made and passed. It's a rhetorical question. And maybe from 20,000 feet on this type of topic, the rulemaking the DRS usually exerts has to do with administrative oversight or processing. This appears to be a policy issue specifically. As a state agency, what authority do we have to impose policy making by rule, by establishing rulemaking decision here and have DRS administer that for us appropriately? And this, I know it's a 20,000-foot question. Just moving forward in the future, how do we address these kind of things and separate it specifically where that bright line is? This says that this is theirs, this is ours, and I'm sure there's 790 original statutory authority that might limit or give this, but a lot of times through the years, we have not accessed the authority that was provided in 790 out of prudence, out of deference, other reasons. Do you have some insight?
My main insight would be that is a great research topic for the new director to figure out and get back to you on. It's just not a subject that I've researched at this point, but it's a good question and something I would like to get my hands around and be able to report back on. Yeah.
All right, Jacob, and yes, I see you. You're still there. Item number 9, standby pay final proposal.
Lost my mouse. There it is. Okay. Final policy presentation for the interim. Standby pay, the issue here is that standby pay is not considered basic salary for Left 2 members, while it is for PERS and PSERS members. Been over this many times, but just typical standby pay conditions. I won't go through all of them, but they're laid out there. And I will just say that in the bill draft in your materials, the language in that is the exact language that is in the PERS and PSERS statutes currently. And because this was an issue during my previous presentation, I talked about when I was doing public records requests to different employers around the state that I didn't get all the data that might be included as standby pay. So it did take a good close look at that PERS and PSERS current statute. And I believe it would capture these other types of pay that might not be called standby pay, but have this other list of bullet points of what's meant by standby pay. So here is the results of those public records requests. Was able to the ones that are in blue are the new ones from last year that the actuaries were able to use. There was one other one, I think it doesn't matter which city, but did not get the exact data I requested, so we're not able to use that one, but was able to add a lot more here. Yeah, last year it was at 10% of the Left 2 active population, so got that up to 15%. And then here was the pricing from last year. Actuaries, because of some of the data concerns and then just the complexity of it with the time crunch, they gave us a pricing range. And so that was from 0 to 4 basis points. And then the pricing update, I don't have a nice chart on this one, but with this new additional data, it kept the high estimate was still 4 basis points, but it raised the low estimate from 0 to 1 basis point. And in talking to the actuary's office about how I just haven't seen a fiscal note during ledge session that would have a range like this. And so I asked them how that would work if there's a bill introduced. Would they be able to produce a fiscal note at that time that identifies a specific cost instead of a range? And couldn't guarantee it, but they believed that's what would occur during session, that they would have to identify a specific cost estimate. So just one policy option in front of the board here is to add standby pay to the definition of basic salary. It aligns Left 2 with the other state pension plans. However, there is an increased cost to the plan. And then there is just the unknown of the data that I was able to get, how accurate that data is, how all the other employers in the state, how that would look. I know we've talked about this a lot with my presentations over the last 2 years on this. So in front of the board today, the possible board action, option 1 would be to endorse the legislation to add standby pay to the definition of basic salary, and option 2 would be no action. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Just a curiosity, this is prospective, not retro, correct? That's the number?
Yes.
Yeah. Make sure I understood that. Yes, sir.
I spoke to this last time that this was in front of us and got us here, but pay is pay. For me, the debate over standby pay has been part of a lot of contract negotiations, but at the end of the day, those officers or firefighters who are on standby have restrictions. They can't just do what they want to do. And to me, they're working during that time. So this is not much of a debate for me. I think this needs to be part of the calculation. And so I support endorsing the legislation.
Is that a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And second. I just want to thank you for those comments. I mean, it means a lot to us to hear our employers say that, because it is quite it's a tie to the job when you're off duty. And so to hear an employer say that, it means a lot. Appreciate that.
I like to second what Chris said.
Each.
All right, constructive comments. On Jason, sorry, I can't, yes, no?
I just wanted to second what Chris said.
Got it. On the motion to endorse legislation number 1. Seeing or hearing no other comments, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's adopted. Thank you very much. All right, I'm gonna give it to you for this, your decision. It is 11:05. I have a note that lunch is ready. We have a ombudsman report, admin report. We've got a few things left to do. Do you want to do a couple more, or do you guys ready to eat now? I don't really care. Okay, all right. So let's take 20, okay? We'll come back at 11:25. All right, everyone, we will go ahead and reconvene our meeting, call it back to order, and we are recording. So item number 10 on our list is the Ombudsman Program Annual Report, and we're fortunate enough to have Tammy in front of us. So good morning, Tammy.
Hi, thank you. Let me get myself organized here. Sorry about that. Boss was distracting me. So as you said, my name is Tammy Sadler. I'm staff to the board, and I am here to present the second annual Ombudsman Program Annual Report. The information that I'm covering today encompasses the fiscal year 2025, which runs from July 1st of 2024 to June 30th of 2025. And I welcome interaction during my presentations. So if you have any questions or comments in the middle of while I'm speaking, then feel free to interrupt. I'm happy to answer any questions in between. I'm going to start off by sharing that we have a mission for the Ombudsman Program. It is to provide members and their families with confidential and impartial assistance to identify and obtain benefits and services for which they may qualify. The Ombudsman Program services are voluntary and paid for by the LEOFF plan. As a LEOFF Ombudsman, we are specialized. We provide expertise in the field of death and disability benefits. A specialized ombudsman is different from classical, legislative, or organizational ombudsmans, which each serve different functions based on the reasons why they were established. We have 3 standards of practices. Our services are confidential, impartial, and independent. These standards come from worldwide standards set forth by ombudsman associations. We belong to 3 ombudsman organizations, the International Ombudsman Association, the United States Ombudsman Association, and up until recently, we also participated with the Coalition of Federal Ombudsmen, but recently they removed our participation eligibility, and they're focusing just on the federal ombudsman programs. A little bit about our program. I'm gonna pull this a little closer here. There we go. A little bit about our program. We I talked about earlier in the second slide there that ombudsman offices are established for many different reasons, and they serve different functions. Our office was served to serve LEOFF members and their families when they are hurt or killed in the line of duty. The benefits that members are eligible for when they are hurt or killed in the line of duty can be highly complex and involve multiple local, state, and federal entities. The LEOFF members are often unaware of the benefits that they might qualify, and they need assistance to navigate not only what is out there for them, but in accessing and maintaining those benefits. And so that's where we come in. We assist them with processes, procedures, and then, of course, how all of the different benefits work together, because it can be really overwhelming and confusing for them. We serve not just the LEOFF members, but their families and all of our stakeholder groups, including all of the organizations that you guys represent. In addition to providing information, resources, and options, our end goal is to give members exactly what they need without overwhelming them with details and information or options that don't apply to them. We try to meet the members exactly where they're at and help them to get to the next step and then the next step and then the next step, depending on where they're at in the process. We want to leave them feeling more confident about their situation and in our services that we provide. So here on this slide, you can see that LEOFF 2 members come to us with a variety of questions. Some of them can be very simple or complex. Everybody's situation is different, like I said. So we often need to meet with our members in order to gain a full understanding of their situation. And that kind of leads to our next slide. So if we request a meeting with a member, these are the sorts of things that they can expect us to provide. We will do an intake interview with the member to get to know them specifically, what their family situation is, what they're dealing with as far as a disability, or if it's a survivor, where they're at in the processes of applying for their benefits. And then we just just walk them through what to expect and how to get to the next step. I thought it might be helpful during this presentation to give you an example of a case that we worked with during this time. I thought this case was a particularly good example of something pretty common that we deal with. And it was also a good example of the way that Jessica and I collaborate in the program. So a member came to us with a fatal diagnosis. Our first connection with them, we talked about, they had already started an L&I claim, so we walked them through the next things that are going to be happening with the claim in that process. And we also did a little bit of survivor planning. And then within the next few months, we met with them, their union representative, their family liaison, and their spouse to answer their questions and to support them in filling out applications. And there was also an issue that we had to step in and address for them on their behalf. Their employer also came to us with some questions, and they wanted to support this member. So we helped them by answering their questions in a separate meeting. We helped them with their questions and helped them support the member as well. Then we were unfortunately notified that the member had passed away by the family liaison. So I walked that person through the mandatory death reporting processes, and we discussed what the immediate needs are of the survivor, which are always money and medical. We want to make sure that the survivor has some income to get them through for the next few months while they're applying for benefits, and that they have medical coverage for them and any dependents that they might have. Once we established that that they did have those resources available to them, then we just waited for the survivor to reconnect with us when they were ready. And then it was Jessica's turn to take over this case. And over the next few months, she answered general questions, provided them with information and resources, helped them get started on their survivor applications, and then worked with the family liaison and the healthcare authority to ensure that the family received medical benefits moving forward. So as you can see, this was a really good example of a progression of a situation from the time that the claim started until the survivor received their benefits. And we provided all kinds of information, options, and resources. And we didn't just work with the member, we worked with multiple people in the process. That kind of concludes the heart of our program, and then I'm going to go into some more administrative type information. So if you have any questions at this time, that would be good. Okay. So as the last time that we met, we talked about how the ombudsman program had kind of started out, how it started out in the beginning, and that had moved more towards a mature program, and that we were establishing some more documented processes and procedures. And that's exactly what we've been continuing to do with the program. Since the last time we met, the ombudsman, Jessica, and I have been meeting with the leadership teams, and we've been working together to develop the mission statement that you saw in the first slide, along with a charter. We've also reviewed and updated our data collection and reporting processes to make sure that we're collecting the data that leadership wants to see from us. And we have transitioned from a formal training program with Jessica to a hands-on learning process with her. We also continue to meet monthly with leadership to discuss any identified procedural or policy issues that are impacting our members. Some pending projects that we are still working on with leadership is establishing measurements for workload management. The number and complexity of our cases are taken into consideration when we're talking about the workload between Jessica and I. As you, if any of you have done case management before, you know that sometimes you might touch a case once. You know, we might spend an hour with a member and then never hear from them again. Or then there's more complex cases where we are working with them for a number of months for several processes, sometimes years. I've actually, the longest I've ever worked with a member was 7 years on a case. It was quite incredible. And so we just take those things into consideration, how much we're actually working on a case, so that we make sure that we're not overwhelming one of us unnecessarily. Jessica and I also meet weekly to review our cases. It provides her an opportunity to ask questions if she needs some additional learning, and also for us to kind of be able to back each other up should we need that in one of our absences. We also work to balance our skills and manage our time. In addition to workload management, we're also working on case work outcomes. So we really want to make sure we are committed to ensuring that we are doing what we intend to do with the program and for our members, which means that we want to hear back from them. And in order to do that, we've been working on developing, and we will soon implement a customer survey for our members that will assist us from getting the caller's perspective. Any process improvements that we can do, we're happy to do that. We're also working on a records retention policy. We are currently following Ombudsman industry standards and procedures that were established at the beginning of our program, and also state standards. And we're just working on putting that in writing. It's just another step towards our maturity.
Tammy, can I ask a question on that to follow up? So record retention, obviously you're dealing with confidential information, and I would say believed to be confidential. Is any of that, I guess, attainable by general public? I mean, can this information be shared? I mean, we're not a doctor. I'm just kind of curious.
Right. We do have strict confidentiality. We don't provide any confidential information that is allowed by state law.
So the general public couldn't just ask for some records request of correspondence, or the employer?
So we did, I forget how many years ago I've been here a while. It's probably about 10 years. I think it was my first session here. DRS ran a bill that was specifically exempting in the Public Records Act, the medical records in that they have. And we got a amendment to that added left to board records. So any medical, so it would include any of the ombuds medical records. Now, there still might be some other information that we have to disclose, but at least the medical information we have a specific exemption for.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Jessica and I do everything that we can to protect our members' privacy. So this, the next couple of slides is just some of the data that we've collected, for this fiscal year. And this one in particular gives a caseload snapshot. We worked with 216 people, because not all of them were members, some of them were employers or dependents. So we had 216 cases. Of that, 154 of them fell into our ombudsman specialty. So they were things that were in our scope of work. 62 of those were subject matters outside of our scope. A lot of those were referrals. 41 of them in particular were referrals to other agencies. So let's say somebody called and they had a service credit question that could be better answered by Department of Retirement Systems. We would refer them to retirement systems. Or let's say they came to us with a disability issue, but they had a self-insured employer, and due to the complexity of their situation, we thought that they would be better served by the self-insured ombudsman's office. We would refer them there. We work really closely back and forth. We refer back and forth with that office as well. We also did a number of service retirements, which is a courtesy service that we provide when requested. And I also wanted to note that of these 216 cases, you'll see that these are the information on the left. Those are the that's the subject matter that we talked about. And oftentimes we will talk about multiple subject matters for one case.
So can I jump in and screw up your flow? Just so if I'd had a rear view mirror while I was presenting, I probably would have seen the look on your face that you could have bailed me out and helped me with the L&I questions. But clearly you do a lot with the L&I process. And could you provide some more background to the question that I got about kind of why there can be that long delay with the L&I duty death determination?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a number of reasons why line of duty death applications can be delayed, and one of the more common ones that we come across are, let's say a member passed away, they retired, they had cancer, their illness did not last for very long. And when the survivor contacted the department to let them know that that person had passed away, the union rep will find out, oh, that was cancer, and that was a presumptive cancer. And so now they're trying to establish a labor and industries claim after the person has already passed away. So now there's a lot of discovery that has to take place. They have to pull medical records. The spouse is grieving and doesn't have a whole lot of capacity. They're trying to deal with their future, and now they're also dealing with their spouse's past. And so that can just create a lot of delay in the process. Another one might be a self-insured employer is debating whether or not that the line of duty that the death actually occurred in line of duty. And so that's a matter of sifting, not just through the medical records, but also the court system, just dealing with the court system on that. Sometimes that's a couple of good examples. Do you want more? I can keep going.
I think that's good.
I kind of glanced at you. I was like,
much better answer than me. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. So on this slide, we have a left side and a right side. On the left side there, I wanted to just highlight a couple of things. When you combine the two, the retired and the active portions there, you'll see that our caseload consisted of 67% active and retirees. The other 33% was again either referrals or out of scope, could be a survivor that we were assisting, or maybe a student was eligible for a tuition waiver and they were giving us a call and had some questions and that sort of thing. On the right, you can see these are what field of business we were in here. We've got 64% firefighters, 22% law enforcement, and 14% other. You can see that we serve significantly more firefighters than law enforcement officers, and we're currently brainstorming ways of reaching the law enforcement community to better serve them. In addition to our regular work, Jessica and I do all kinds of different activities. We work on educating the community about our program, and we also try to get smart ourselves. So here are some activities that we were involved in during this fiscal year. We not only attend these events to promote our program and to answer questions for our members, but we also learn from our stakeholders. We get to attend sometimes their presentations that they have, and we learn their perspective and how they're impacted by the issues that we are studying and that we're involved in, and we get to learn what's important to them. So that's really cool. I think it's really a two-way situation when we attend these events. In addition to just attending them, I presented at the Counselor Foundation training, the Seattle Local, the State Council's Education Conference, and then I jump into Walk Hops when Chris or Teresa say, "Hey, Tammy's here, let's ask her." Here's where Jessica and I got smart. Here's the trainings that we did for this year. Along with the 3 ombudsman associations, we also belong to the International Foundation for Employee Benefit Plans, just like you guys are members of that. I'd like to highlight that Jessica completed the foundation's CAP program. I don't know how many of you also did the CAP program, but I did, and it was challenging. So I want to say that we're really proud of her for successfully completing that during this fiscal year. And then other parts of this of our trainings are in our field of expertise. They like the Labor and Industries Claims Process Project. And then some of them are just keeping up with our peers and our standards of practice and knowing where our resources are. And of course, these don't include the independent learning that we do that often comes from they often come from the questions that our members provide when we're serving them. That concludes my presentation. Here's my contact information, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
No questions, just gratitude for the work that you continue to do to serve all the members. These can be difficult times, whether it's you're separating because you want to, or it's just time. Either way, it's hard. So just thanks for the care you provide.
Yeah, from my standpoint, I think it's really, we're fortunate that we can turn over a member, police, fire, whatever it may be, to you to take care of. And we don't worry about it because we trust you both very much. And you have proven over the time that you're very good. You're very valuable. Makes a big difference to all of us. So thank you.
On that note, I just had recently had a member reach out to me and ask that I express his gratitude to the Ombudsman program. He was struggling. He asked me for direction, and my direction was straight to you two. And he called me, in fact, going home from the last meeting to say everything worked out great. He's completely taken care of, and he'd like to offer up his information for you to contact him, and he would be willing to we had talked about videos and such. He'd be willing to participate in that or even write a letter, whatever it took. But he wanted the board to know that he was extremely grateful for the program. And he said it's successful, and he's proof of that. So thank you on his behalf.
Thank you, Daryl.
Thanks, Daryl.
Like to hear that. All right.
Thank you very much. All right. Item number 11, the admin update. Hey, Jacob, you're up here now.
Yeah, I'll stay up here for this one. Brief admin update. So the board got the 2025 Public Pension Coordinating Council Funding Award Certificate. It's the 11th year the board has received this. Tim handles the application process, so thank you for remembering to do that. And then other update was that DRS provided correspondence to the boards included in your materials on 2 bills that they're going to move forward this year. They've actually already been dropped and have bill numbers. If you'd like to hear about specifics about those, Seth got all dressed up and sat through the whole board meeting. So instead of me explaining them, he can. If there's any need to hear about those. No? Okay. Sorry, Seth.
Take your tie off.
And then just some upcoming outreach events. Gets a little quieter this time of year. There is the legislative conference for the firefighters in January, and then the WACOPS winter meeting in February that board staff will be attending and usually presenting at. So that is all for the admin update.
All right, thank you. Item number 12 on the list is public comment, and Left Board welcomes our public comment in advance of all meetings. We received 2 comments. The first one was Catherine Leathers, the Director of Department of Retirement Systems, regarding possible legislation, and those were shared with our board in advance of today's meeting. And then the second one was from Christy McClellan, who is regarding surviving spouse benefits, and that was all posted for our consideration. So those have been made available to all of us, and I'm sure we'll have conversations as we move into the next year. Comments? All right. Item number 13 on our list is executive session, and it is specifically to discuss performance of an employee, public employee. We will be in executive session for 30 minutes. So we will come back at 12:25. And there after that, we'll have one item to take care of, which will be relatively quick, and then we'll be adjourned. So if we may, we'll go ahead and move to executive session. I think you're going to poll some people online. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Hope everybody's got that. Admin committee link has been emailed to all of you online. So we're going to switch over there so you can join us in the other room. So go ahead and recess for 30 minutes. Yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and reconvene our December 17th meeting. Item number 14 was the final evaluation wrap up. At this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. McGilligan.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to increase the executive director Nelson's salary the level the board adopted for the future executive director of $197,328 annually, effective today, December 17th, 2025.
Is there a second? Motion is made and seconded. Comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. No other items are before the group today. I'd like to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. Look forward to seeing everybody in January. Safe travels if you're going somewhere. And have a great day. Oh, by the way, they are laminated.
We need to change some dates.
Yeah, change some dates. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you.
All right, good job.